to my approach to my pre-trip inspection on my tractor and trailer. First thing I'm going to do is take a step back and see if there's any leans in my tractor and trailer. If I did have a lean, it'll mean one of three things. I mean, I
Cargo
have to
shift,
my cargo, I have a flat
flat
tire,
tire,
or
or
depending
suspension
on my
problem.
suspensions. I'm going to look for any leaks underneath my engine compartment, which I don't have any. I don't see any signs of coolant, oil, or power steering fluid. I'm going to start with my clearance lights. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, amber in color, clean, and they are working properly. I'm going to do my headlights. High beams and low beams are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are white in color, they're clean, and they are working properly. My left and right turn signals, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, amber in color, clean, working properly. They have three functions. They are my left and right turn signals, my four-way hazards, and also my reflectors. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my hood, clear. I'm gonna start on my passenger side. I'm gonna do an overall condition of all my hoses, both soft and hard hoses. My soft hoses, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing parts. My hard hoses is not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are all properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts, bolts, or clamps, and also not leaking. This is my belt-driven alternator. It is properly mounted and secured. It is not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. There's no
You
corrosion
good.
or none of my wires is cut, torn, or frayed, and they are properly mounted and secured. My serpentine belt that runs my alternator is not cut, torn, or frayed, no loose fibers. If I were to pull or push in the center of it, it should have no more than a half to three-quarters inch of play, and it is also properly mounted and secured. This right here is my exhaust system, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no illegal holes or welds, not missing any nuts or bolts or clamps. I'm gonna take you to the end of it. Right over here is my exhaust tip, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts or clamps, and it's also not leaking, doesn't have any signs of any carbon soot. I'm done with the passenger side. I'm gonna get to my driver's side. Should do an overall condition of all my hoses too, right here on my driver's side, both hard and soft hoses. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are all properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing nuts, bolts, or clamps, and they are not leaking. This right here is my coolant reservoir, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. That cap is on tight, not missing any nuts or bolts. My fluid level is between the minimum and maximum fluid level, also not leaking. My, my radiator hoses is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. Oh, no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. Not missing any nuts, bolts, or clamps. Not leaking. This right here is my oil filler tube, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. Cap is on tight, also not leaking. This right here is my belt-driven water pump, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing any nuts or bolts. Also, it is not leaking. This right here is my dipstick, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. My fluid level is between the minimum and maximum level, and it is also not leaking. I got my air compressor, which is gear driven. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, also not leaking. My air compressor hoses, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, properly mounted and secured, also not leaking. This is my power steering reservoir, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. The cap is on tight. My fluid level is between the minimum and maximum level, also not leaking. I got my power steering hoses. Both of them are properly mounted and secured. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. Not missing any nuts, bolts, or clamps. Not leaking. Now, if I were to follow this power steering hose right here, at the end of that right there is where my power steering pump is, which is gear driven. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, also not leaking. This is my steering shaft. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and it is properly mounted and secured. My steering knuckles, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, free of any debris. This is my gearbox, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, also not leaking. This is my pitman arm, my drag link. This is my upper control arm. This is my lower control arm, and connected to my tie rod. They all share the same characteristics. They're all properly mounted and secured. None of them is bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And I got 4 ball joints. I got 3 on this side, 1 on that side. They are all properly mounted and secured, properly greased, no worn boots. I got all my capsule nuts and cotter pins all in place and accounted for. Suspension, brakes, and wheels. If there's anything you guys are going to remember about your pre-trip, it's the suspension, brakes, and wheels. Most of your points is going to come from your suspension, brakes, and wheels. Let me give them to you right now. My suspensions consist of my lead spring mounts. I got 2 of them, one in the front, one in the rear. My lead spring mounts are all properly mounted and secured. They are not broken, cracked, or damaged. I have no missing eyeballs or bushings on any of my mounts. My lead spring itself is not shifted out of alignment more than 1/4 of an inch. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. I got 2 U-bolts, 1 and 2. They are both properly mounted and secured, none of them is broken, cracked, or damaged, and I got 4 locking nuts underneath that's holding them down. This right here is my shock absorber. It got mounts, top and bottom mounts. My shock absorber mounts are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any eye bolts or bushings on my mounts. My shock absorber itself is not bent, it's not broken, cracked, or damaged, properly mounted and secured, not leaking. That's your suspensions. Now, let's get to our brakes. The first thing I'm going to do is my brake hoses. And it's properly mounted and secured. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. Also, not leaking. This right here is my brake chamber. There's no dents or illegal welds on my brake chamber. It's also not broken, cracked, or damaged. It is properly mounted and secured, and it is also not leaking. My brake chamber clamp is properly mounted and secured. Not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing any nuts or bolts. This right here is my slack adjuster and my push rod. They're both properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. If I were to pull on my slack adjuster, I get no more than an inch of play in my push rod with the brakes released. This right here is my brake lining, also known as shoe pads. It is not worn, dangerously thin, less than 1/4 of an inch. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, free of any contaminants such as dirt, oil, and grease. My brake drums, there's no bluing or heat cracks on my brake drums, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. That too is also free of any dirt, oil, or grease. Done with my suspensions, done with my brakes. Let's get down to our wheels. My front steer, my tire is at a good height. My tread depth is evenly worn all the way around. My tread depth should be no less than 4/32 of an inch. My inner and outer sidewalls of my tires, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are properly mounted and secured, and they are properly seated onto my rims. My rims themselves is properly mounted and secured. It is not broken, cracked, or damaged. There is no illegal holes or welds. There's no cracks or distortions on my bolt holes of my rims. My lug nuts and studs, they are all properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. I don't have any signs of rust trails or shiny threads, which would indicate I would have a loose lug nut. And none of my lug nuts are distorted either. This right here is my hub axle seal or hub oil seal. It's properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, also not leaking. Now, if I were to check the oil level, I'll be able to check it by taking this seal off. This right here is my valve stem and cap, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. Cap is on tight, not bent, and it's not leaking. Now, I will check the inflation of my tire with a tire gauge right here and not a tire thumper, and make sure that it's up to manufacturer specs that's located on the sidewalls of my tire. Suspension, brakes, and wheels on your first axle. This right here is my driver's side marker light, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, amber in color, clean, working properly. It has 3 functions. It is my left turn signal, my 4-way hazard, and my reflector. My driver's side door, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. My mirror and mirror housing bracket is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. My mirror itself is not broken, cracked, or damaged. It is properly mounted and secured. It is clean, and it is free of any obstruction or illegal stickers. This right here is my outer door handle and inner door handles and my latches. It's all properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and they are working properly. This right here is my door hinges. My door hinges are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and it's also strong enough to hold my door. My outer and inner door seals, it's not cut, torn, or frayed. It is properly mounted and secured, and they are intact. I'm going to go ahead and do my safety equipment. The first thing I'm going to do is check my ABC fire extinguisher that is fully charged in the green and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and open up my baggage compartment. And in here, I should have my 3 DOT reflective triangles, which I have right here and accounted for. And I have my spare fuses present and accounted for. My driver's side steps are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no debris that'll make me slip, no illegal holes or welds, not missing any nuts or bolts. Right over here is my DEF tank and cap. My cap is on tight. They're both properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, also not leaking. I must always have 1/8 of a tank of DEF in my tank. This is my DEF tank strap mounts. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. It's also strong enough to hold my tank. This is my fuel tank and cap. My fuel tank and cap. My cap is on tight, properly mounted and secured, not leaking. So is my fuel tank. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, and it's also not leaking. I got 2 strap mounts. I got 1 and 2. Both of my fuel tank strap mounts are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and they are actually strong enough to hold my tank. This right here is my fuel lines. My fuel lines, there's no abrasive bolts or cuts. The wires is not cut, torn, or frayed. They're both properly mounted and secured, and my fuel lines are actually not leaking. All right, work our way over here to the back of the tractor. I'm gonna first start with my DOT reflectors that's on top. Okay, my DOT reflectors are properly mounted and secured. They're not cut, torn, or frayed. They are white in color. They're clean and they're present. This right here is my actual header board. My header board properly mounted and secured. There's no bulges, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No damage or missing rivets.
I'm sorry.
Right over here, guys. This right here are my couplings. My couplings are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. They are also not leaking. I got my airlines. My airlines, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are properly mounted and secured. They are not pinched, tangled, or dragging dangerously on my catwalk and steps, and they are also not leaking. I got my glad hands. My glad hands are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. My glad head O-rings is not cut, torn, or frayed. It is properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts or bolts, and these are not leaking. My electrical line, there's no corrosion. It's not cut, torn, or frayed, properly mounted and secured, and I got my pigtails latched with the safety cap in place. I got my tractor frame and cross members, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, no illegal holes or welds. My catwalk and steps are both properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no illegal holes or welds, not missing any nuts or bolts, properly mounted onto my tractor frame and cross members. Right over here, guys, is my drive shaft. My drive shaft is not bent, it's not broken, cracked, or damaged, and it is properly mounted and secured. Right over here is my U-joints. My U-joints are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, also free of any debris. All right, guys, remember what I said. Suspension, brakes, and wheels. I'm going to do my suspension, brakes, and wheels on my second axle. Okay? Since I'm standing right here, everything I need to see is right here where I'm standing at. You guys got to have a very good point of view, or else you guys might just miss something. All right, so I'm gonna start with my suspensions on my second axle. This is my control arm mount. My control arm mount is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any eye bolts or bushings on my control arm mount. This is my control arm itself. It's properly mounted and secured. It has not been broken, cracked, or damaged. And I got 2 U-bolts that's holding them down. My 2 U-bolts are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. I got 4 locking nuts underneath that are present and tight that are holding them down. Right over here, that right there is my shock absorber. It has mounts. It has a top and bottom mount. My shock absorber mounts are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing eye bolts or bushings on my mounts. This right here is my shock absorber itself. It's not bent, it's not broken, cracked, or damaged, properly mounted and secured, also not leaking. Right behind that, that right there is my airbag. My airbag there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It is properly mounted and secured, and it is also not leaking. I'm done with my suspensions. Now let's get to our brakes. First thing I got to do, or that I want to do, is my brake hoses. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing parts. Also not leaking. These are my dual brake chambers. There's no dents or illegal welds on my dual brake chambers. They're properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, and they are not leaking. My brake chamber clamps, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. This right here is my stack adjuster and my push rod. They're upside down on this one. They are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. If I were to pull on my stack adjuster, I should get no more than an inch of play on my push rod with the brakes released. Okay, so right in here is my brake linings, also known as shoe pads. Okay, they're properly mounted and secured. They're not worn dangerously thin, less than a quarter of an inch. Not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and is free of any dirt, oil, and grease. This is my brake drum. There's no heat cracks or bluing around my brake drums. They are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. Now, no illegal welds, and it's also free of any contaminants such as dirt, oil, and grease. Let's get down to our dual wheels. Okay, our dual wheels. First of all, they are both at an even height. Okay, my tread depth is evenly worn all the way around on both of them. My tread depth should be no less than 2/32 of an inch. My inner and outer sidewalls on my duals, first of all, they're not touching. There's no debris in between, and there's no gap on my dual rims. My inner and outer sidewalls of my tires, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are properly mounted and secured, and they are properly seated onto my rims. My rims themselves, there's no illegal welds. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no on my there's no cracks or distortions on my lug nut holes in my rims. My lug nuts and studs are all properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. None of them is missing. They're all present and tight. I don't have any signs of rust trails or shiny threads, which would indicate I would have a loose lug nut. This is my hub axle seal, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. Now, if I was to have a side glass, I'd be able to check the oil level on my hub oil seal, and it's also not leaking. I got dual valve stems and caps. They are both properly mounted and secured, not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Cap is on tight, also not leaking. Now, I would check the inflation on my tire with the tire gauge, not a tire thumper, and check it here, and it should be up to manufacturer specs that's located on the sidewalls of my tire. Now, I would inspect my third axle the same way I just inspected my second axle. This right here is my front trailer apron. It's properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no illegal holes or welds, and it's properly sitting on top of my fifth wheel skid plate. My fifth wheel skid plate is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. It is properly greased, and there's no gap in between my skid plate and my trailer apron. This right here is my pivot pin, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. This right here is my platform, my fifth wheel platform. It is properly mounted and secured. It is not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. And my trailer platform, my fifth wheel platform, is right on top of my fifth wheel sliding frame. My fifth wheel sliding frame is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts on the top or on the side of it. These right here are my fifth wheel locking pins, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are in a locked position. This right here is my release handle. My fifth wheel release handle is properly mounted and secured. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. And this is actually in its locked position. All right. This thing right here that looks like a shock absorber is actually my fifth wheel air piston. My fifth wheel air piston is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, not leaking. This right here is my fifth wheel air piston supply line. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It is properly mounted and secured, and it is also not leaking. Okay. Let me finish up. Okay. So underneath here, right over here, I got my locking jaw. That's my fifth wheel locking jaw right here, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, and is locked around my kingpin shank, which takes me to my kingpin itself. It's not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. It is properly mounted and secured, and it's not bent. All right, so my fifth wheel positioning is positioned so that way I would have proper clearance for my mud flap and my landing gear to not touch each other when I'm making turns. My rear tractor frame and cross members is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No illegal holes and welds, not missing any nuts or bolts. This right here is my tractor tail lights. They're properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are red in color, they're clean, and they are working properly. They have four functions. They are my left and right turn signal, my four-way hazards, my brake lights, and also my reflectors. This right here is my mud flat bracket. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. My red and white DOT tape is not cut, torn, or frayed, properly mounted and secured, and it covers 100% of my mud flap. My mud flap itself is not cut, torn, or frayed. It is properly mounted and secured, and they have proper height from the floor. Boom, I'm done with my tractor. Let me get out right here so we can do our trailer. Okay, first thing I'm going to do on my front trailer, I'm going to do my clearance slice that's on top. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are amber in color. They're clean, and they only serve as my clearance lights. This is my header board. My bulkhead. Sorry. My bulkhead is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No bulging, not missing, or do I have any damaged rivets. And it's also strong enough to contain my cargo. The side of my trailer is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no bulges. I don't have any damage or missing rivets on anywhere on the side of my trailer. My red and white DOT tape is not cut, torn, or frayed. It is properly mounted and secured. On this one, it covers 100% of the length of my trailer. It should at least cover 80% of it. This is my trailer frame. This is my trailer floor. And these are my trailer cross members. My trailer frame, floor, and cross members are all properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no illegal holes or welds, not missing any nuts or bolts. And there's no holes on the floor of my trailer, and it's also strong enough to contain my cargo. This right here is my landing gear. My landing gear feet is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and they are fully raised. My support member, my landing gear frame and cross members are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, no illegal holes or welds. This is my landing gear crank handle, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, and it's in the stowed away position. Let's work our way down. All right, this is my trailer center side marker light, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, amber in color, it's clean, and it's working properly. This has three functions. It is my left turn signal, my four-way hazards, and my reflectors. All right, now we're gonna get to our trailer tandems. I'm gonna do my trailer tandem hoses, which is properly mounted and secured, no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are not pissed, tangled, or dragging dangerously on the floor, and they are also not leaking. This is my sliding tandem release handle, which is properly mounted and secured. It is not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged, and it's in its locked position. This right here is my tandem sliding frame, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no illegal holes or welds. These are my locking pins. My tandem sliding locking pins are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are in its locked position. Now, remember what I said, suspension, brakes, and wheels. Let's get it. Right over here, this right here is my torque arm mount, or you can call it control arm, whichever one you guys want to call it. You guys are still going to get the same point. Okay? But these are my mounts. My mounts are properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. There's no missing eye bolts or bushings on my mounts. This right here is my torque arm itself, or my control arm. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. These right here are my shock absorber. They got mounts, top and bottom mounts. My mounts are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No missing eye bolts or bushings on my mounts. My shock absorber itself is not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Not is properly mounted and secured, and is also not leaking. My airbags right here. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It is properly mounted and secured, and it is also not leaking. Now, done with my suspensions. Let's get to our brakes. My brake hoses. There's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. It is properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing parts. Also not leaking. My brake chamber. There's no dents or illegal welds on my brake chamber. It is properly mounted and secured. Not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not leaking. My brake chamber clamps are properly mounted and secured. Not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing any nuts or bolts. These right here are my stack adjuster and my push rods. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing any nuts or bolts. If I were to pull on my stack adjuster, I should get no more than an inch of play on my push rod with the brakes released. These right here is my brake lining, also known as shoe pads. It's not worn dangerously thin, less than a quarter of an inch. It is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. It's also free of any contaminants such as dirt, oil, and grease. This right here is my brake drum. There's no bluing or heat cracks on my brake drums. They are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No illegal holes or welds. Free of any contaminants such as dirt, oil, and grease. Done with my suspensions, done with my brakes. Now let's get down to our dual tires, our wheels. My dual tires, they're both at an even height. My tread depth on them is evenly worn all the way around. My tread depth should be no less than 2/32 of an inch. My inner and outer sidewalls of my tires, first of all, they're not touching. There's no debris in between, and there's no gap on my rims. My inner and outer sidewalls, there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. They are properly mounted and secured, and they are properly seated onto my rims. My rims are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. No illegal holes or welds. There's no cracks or distortions around my lug nut holes on my rims. My lug nuts and studs are all properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. Not missing any nuts or bolts. I don't have any signs of rust trails or shiny threads, which would indicate I would have a loose lug nut. This is my hub axle seal. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts. It is not leaking. If I were to have a sight glass, I'll be able to check the oil level on my hub oil seal. My dual valve stem and caps. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not broken, cracked, or damaged. They're not bent. Cap is on tight. Also, they are not leaking. Now, I checked the inflation of my tire with a tire gauge right here and not a tire thumper. It should be up to manufacturer specs that's located on the sidewalls of my tire. Now, I would inspect axle 5 the same way I just inspected axle 4. This right here is my trailer mud flaps. My trailer mud flaps is properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed. It has proper height from the floor. My mud flap hanger itself is not bent, broken, cracked, or damaged. Properly mounted and secured, not missing any nuts or bolts. This right here is my DEF on my ABS light. My ABS light is properly mounted and secured. It's not broken, cracked, or damaged. It is amber in color. It's clean and it's working properly. Now, if this light were to stay on, I'd have to get my ABS serviced on my trailer immediately. This is my rear trailer marker light. Properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. It is red in color, clean, and it's working properly. It only has one function. It's only my reflectors. Now, we're going to get to the rear. I'm going to do an overall condition of the rear of my trailer. I'm going to first start with my clearance lights that's on the rear. They are red in color. They are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are clean, and they are working properly. This is my rear trailer doors. Are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no bulging. My hinges are all properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. None of them is missing any nuts, bolts, or clamps, and they are strong enough to hold the weight of my door. My door seals, not cut, torn, or frayed, properly mounted and secured, and they are all intact. My handles and latches, properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, not missing any nuts or bolts, and they're not broken, cracked, or damaged. My red and white DOT tape, properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed. It covers 100% of the rear of my door. My trailer tail lights, they are properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged. They are red in color, they're clean, and they are working properly. They have 4 functions on the rear. They are my left and right turn signals. They are my 4-way hazards. They are also my brake lights and my running lights. This right here is my trailer DOT bumper, which is properly mounted and secured, not broken, cracked, or damaged, no illegal holes or welds, not missing any nuts or bolts. Our red and white DOT tape is properly mounted and secured, not cut, torn, or frayed. It covers 100% of the rear of my trailer. Now, I'd inspect the right side, passenger side of my tractor and trailer the same way I inspected the left side, driver's side of my tractor and trailer. I don't have to do this shit right here, but you guys can if you want. But that concludes my pre-trip inspection.
You don't have to do the license.